Abumrad, the creator and co-host of the public radio show and podcast Radiolab. It started off as a deep dive into science-related stories, then opened up to other stories where there was a meaningful conflict to investigate or mystery to solve. He co-reports the new Radiolab miniseries, The Vanishing of Harry Pace. He also co-reported the miniseries Dolly Parton's America. History plays such a big part in the miniseries that you've been doing, and all of the miniseries that you've been doing. And, you know, like with Dolly Parton, the Civil War figures into it because at Dollywood, there used to be something called Dolly's Dixie Stampede, in which people in the audience are divided into two teams, North and South, and they're competing with each other. And of course, Dixie figures into the title, and she's called out for it eventually in a piece by Aisha Harris, and she takes Dixie out of the name and changes it from North Pole to South Pole, so it doesn't seem so Civil War-ish. Mm-hmm. So that, I mean, excuse me for doing such a short and not very good version of that, but the larger point I want to make is that the echoes of the Civil War still figure into our culture and certainly figure into your miniseries Dolly Parton's America. And of course, your father left Lebanon because of Civil War. So like Civil War it's a part of your life. You haven't directly experienced it, but it's there in the shadows of your life.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, I'd never made that connection, but you're absolutely right. You know, it's funny. And therein lies, I think, one of the principal differences. You know, the Civil War as it's taught and thought about in Nashville, less and less these days, but certainly when I was growing up, it's glorified. It's talked about in a kind of antebellum romantic way of, you know, big dresses and plantation homes. And
so, you know, we're not having another Civil War.
And,
Trumpers who want that are just going to get mopped up in a terrorist operation. That's all it is. It's a mop-up terrorist operation, not a Civil War. People think about the Lebanese Civil War. It was unavoidable. It is not romanticized. I mean, certainly there are different versions of truth that you will get from any number of the 18 different sects that were at war in Lebanon, but I certainly registered it by watching my parents watch the TV in 1983 when there was that famous bombing of the Marine barracks in Lebanon. I distinctly remember them looking at the TV and the sadness I saw on their faces. So it's a strange dissonance to see that, and then to also grow up in a place where this very traumatic bit of American history is kind of routinely sanitized and glorified. And I grew up in that South. In Colorado, you see some nice cars because of legal weed.
But to also be in a place where the trauma is
and I guess
hidden intentionally.
They can't put their money in banks, so they put it in nice cars.
So you wanted to be a film composer. You studied composition. What was the transition into radio? What made you think you wanted to work in radio?
You know, I was at that moment where I was trying to write music for films. I realized I was kind of sucking at it. And I was also simultaneously working in this new industry called the internet. This is 1996, so this is when like the internet was like as a commercial platform really exploding. And I was hating that work and failing at the work I really loved and trying to also write stories, and that wasn't working. So I was kind of in that very typical post-college flail. And my then girlfriend, now wife, Carla, said, well, look, you kind of like to write stories, you like to write music. Have you ever thought about radio? Because it's kind of like, it's sound, which is kind of like music, and it's also very much about writing, storytelling, so why don't you do that? I met a person who turned out to work at
a lot of
WBAI,
construction these days, too.
And I went and volunteered for them.